Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio with me now. Senator, good morning to you. How are folks in Florida trying to work through this?
Well, I mean, it's how do you work through it? I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, people, I imagine, can't drive less if they have to get to work, if they have to take their kids to school. So you're cutting it somewhere else. It's now become real for a lot of people. This is not 1 week of gas prices up. This is now eating away daily, weekly, monthly at people's budget at a time when everything else is up, right? So it's not just gas prices, it's food prices, it's shortages of things. You just talked about baby formula. So it's a combination of factors, and it's really a parade of horribles, all, in fact, due in many ways to the Biden administration's decisions. They have waged war against fossil fuels.
Let me go through a couple of things here, all right? NBC poll, when they ask, how do you think your family's doing? I mean, this is 2/3, 65% say they're falling behind. That's really stunning. In your home state that I mentioned in Florida, inflation in places like Miami and Fort Lauderdale, you're at 9.6% versus the country's 8.3%. And a lot of that has to do with demand in Florida. Wall Street Journal, Miami locals are steamed over relocating New Yorkers that are driving up apartment rents. And the price of a home, if you can find one to buy, is going up as well. So it looks like Florida feels it more than the rest of America. That's the point.
Well, I mean, it's always a supply and demand issue, and obviously there's more demand in Florida in terms of housing. We know that that's a problem. Yesterday, we announced this bill that we're doing to help. It's called the HELP Act, and it's to help firefighters, first responders, and teachers to be able to afford to buy a home in the community that they serve, modeled after what we do for veterans. But holistically, people say 9-point-something% in Florida. It's actually much higher, because on the things that people pay on a daily basis, on food, on gas, on energy prices, on all the things that we use constantly and that are really essential for working people, the rate is substantially higher, sometimes in the 30 or 35% for some commodities, for some food products. Look, this is a big problem. This is the problem the Biden administration said didn't exist a year ago and actually made worse by pumping $1.9 trillion, by waging war on oil and gas, making it harder to produce American oil and gas. They've made it harder and continue to make it harder. They have no plan to address it. And I think it's just going to get worse. It's a combination of incompetence and ideological stringency on the far left.
Let me come back to that point here. I mean, the good news is Florida's booming, right? I mean, we can admit that over the past 4 or 5 years. I mean, the growth in that state is extraordinary. Back on the numbers, though, the 3 fastest growing cities over the last 12 months, they're all there. It's Miami and Orlando and Tampa. But the problem is, as we mentioned, the rent skyrockets. It's up 28% in Florida versus the national average of just over 16%. And then you were talking about gas prices there a moment ago. You now have the U.S. government trying to cut a deal with Venezuela potentially to try and get more oil out of that country. And so you're negotiating with dictators, is what the critics would say on behalf of the current energy policy of this administration. How do you find your way out of that box?
Well, they actually are trying to say that it's about oil. It really isn't. Venezuela has no oil to give us. 90% of their oil goes to China to pay the interest on the debt. 10% automatically goes to Cuba that provides all of their security, internal security, how they spy on their own people, their government, and how they repress the population. This has to do with the fact that we have far left extremists inside of that White House who are sympathizers, not just to the Cuban regime, but the one in Nicaragua, the one in Venezuela. Obviously, they sympathize with these people. They hated the sanctions, and they just thought that oil was a good excuse that they could get people to support them on. But this has nothing to do with oil, because Venezuela can't provide us oil. The oil that we need, we have. It's in America. They need to allow us to explore it, and they're not. They're telling banks not to fund these projects. They're canceling leases. They're waging war on fossil fuels. They're waging war on oil and natural gas, and it's one of the reasons why supply is not as high as it needs to be.
Do you see any of that changing as long as this administration is in
on Venezuela, et cetera?
No,
or just in general?
Gas prices,
no, they're absolutely not going to change. No, I think there are people in their party that actually like it. They're not going to say it. They don't want to get crushed in the next elections, although I believe they will be. But they like the fact that there's inflation and high prices. They believe the more expensive oil and gas gets, the more people are going to buy electric cars. Well, not everyone can afford an electric car right now. We don't have enough electric car, and the batteries for those electric cars are made in China. Look, these guys, they want this. I've had people tell me to my face, well, that's why we need more mass transit. Everyone should be riding a bus and getting rid of their cars. I think there are elements on the left, a lot of elements on the far left that will never admit it, but they like the fact that oil and natural gas is expensive.
Marco Rubio, thank you for your time, Senator, from Washington today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dana.
Well,